Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In our effort to get corner to corner to corner in the entire garden this season, we are in the back corner where originally there was a metal building back here. I took the skin off of it and I was going to turn it into a greenhouse. It's out here for almost 3 years, and then this spring I was like, I don't need a greenhouse. I don't even know why. I came up with this idea just to make content for YouTube or something. Is the reason why, obviously. And so I took that thing down and recycled the metal, and we reclaimed this back garden space. We've got a giant load of wood chips, and we don't have, this is a 0.19 acre lot here in Raleigh, don't have a lot of room to store a giant thing of wood chips at one time. So all the paths in the garden here, and then all of the new spaces we were creating, we still had a good amount of wood chips left. So I had piled them back here. And so this morning I got the small cart and got rid of the vast majority of the wood chips, redid the paths again. We put so much foot traffic on them that they had packed down enough that we could move all of those wood chips out of here and just left a thin layer. So this is mulched with wood chips for now. This is the path going around this direction. And when we're almost done with planting. We have one cart of annuals out here that we're planting, and then we're gonna still have some holes back here that we're gonna be able to fill in, which is kind of exciting because we basically didn't have any holes in the garden last year, but the new foundation space that opened up, the front corner opened up, this corner opened up, and we ended up with space. And we've moved a few plants around. It was kind of exciting to be able to find additional space. But once we get all of these rest of these annuals in the ground in the next few days, we'll pump the brakes for a second, and I'll put the drone up and we'll do a walkthrough. You can see all the trails system that's in the front garden, that's been created this season in the front garden, and the finishing of the trail system back here in the back garden. So those videos are coming up, and you'll get to see how all of this works together, and how we could probably, we can take a wheelbarrow from right here and go the entire trail system through here and maintain everything, weed everything, hopefully have more people in the garden. We had a garden group in here last year with maybe, I don't know how many people were here. It was 50 plus, and it became gridlock because it's a small lot. So I knew that I needed to have the trail system a little bit better out here so people could continue to move. People hit dead ends. I didn't want any more dead ends. Anyway, so there you go. I've this morning got wood chips out of here, and then I pulled some back here that I'll use for mulch in this space now that I have finished planting. And this will be our regular brown mulch going forward back here. I'm just using the wood chips for now. This spot right in this area has been our kind of compost pile for the last 4 years of this project. And this soil's unbelievable. I can take the shovel and stick it down in the ground just like that, as far down as, it's this deep with just compost. So these plants are in a little bit of a pretty happy spot. We'll go through the plants that we've added so far. Again, there's additional space. The fence, the property line is here. So the fence is going through here, and the fence is happening in May. And you can see that there'll be some holes left to fill in later on, which is kind of exciting. We're not gonna rush to go buy anything to fill these holes in. We're gonna travel some and hopefully find some things that are interesting or different than are already here in the garden, and add those later on to these empty spots. This Carex, this is Everglow Carex, which has more of a yellow variegation. A lot of the other variegated Carexes have kind of a more off-white variegation, either on the outside of the leaf or on the inside of the leaf. This one should have been cut back. It's been in a container for like 3 years, and I should have cut this one back. It's already all that new growth coming up in it, so it's a little late to be cutting it back at this point. But if it still looks a little rough this next winter, I'll cut it back. They're evergreen in our area. This is Carex oceamensis, and again, this variety is called Everglow, and it's kind of a yellow, chartreuse color, of course, for our garden. Lots of chartreuse things. Again, if I'd have cut it back, all that fresh growth coming on it right now, you'd see how vivid yellow it is. Again, too late for that, so it's in the ground. It'll be perfectly happy. All that new growth will overtake this old tattered growth, and it'll look good in a few weeks. And then next winter, coming out of winter, we can either cut them back or not cut them back. We cut our Reverillo Carex back this year because it looked a little rough coming out of winter. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. There is a Sun King Aurelia in this space, and this is a perennial for almost everybody watching. I see Zones 3 to 9 on this, but then I also see 4 to 8. So I don't know if it's actually hardy in zone 3 or not. These will perennialize, get maybe 3 feet tall and 3 feet wide. When we see these in gardens, they're quite striking. A couple people have, a few companies have put it in a branded container, but it was actually just a found plant that somebody had created in Japan and then was brought back to the States. It has it gets a small white flower on it that then turns into a berry that the birds actually like, but this thing can actually seed itself and become a colony by seed. So what we'll do is we'll take, after the thing flowers, we'll just cut the thing back a little bit so it doesn't produce any actual viable seed. But this is another chartreuse member of the garden here in Raleigh, North Carolina. There's at least 8 or more things coming, and so it'll be kind of a brief synopsis of each of them. Once they get anchored in the ground, we'll cover them more in the future, maybe even in individual videos. And there's so much happening in this garden right now. It just really is it's amazing. And once we get to slow down here after some of these rest of these things are in the ground, we'll go through the garden a little bit slower in the next few weeks. This, all the Alyssium we have in the garden so far are native to the southeast. This one's Alyssium anisatum, which is actually Japanese anise or Japanese star anise. We actually got this one this weekend from Jason Stevens, who we've done a couple of videos with. He showed us the grafting in a video and a couple other things. He always has some interesting, unique things. This one goes by Purple Glaze in the trade. It has a Japanese name that I'm not going to try to butcher in this video, but you can see this incredible purple new foliage that comes, on the spring new growth here. It will become a very large shrub or a small tree in time. The flower on this variety is kind of a whitish pink, and it's a slightly fuller flower than our southeastern native anise or Alyssium flowers are. It's really kind of a full, almost a full-on flower. These are very old lineage plants, and the flowers are primitive compared to, other flowering things that we have in our gardens. They're just alien-looking flowers. The beautiful new foliage on this one fades to a little bit of to a dark green and then to a little bit of a yellow in time. So we'll see this thing evolve over the course of the season. It's a small shrub or a small tree or a large shrub, vase-shaped in this corner. This is, I didn't even mention at the beginning of the video, this is part shade or shade conditions back here. So everything you're seeing is going to be tolerant of that. There's a couple hollies back here that might like a little more sun than we're going to give them, but they'll do fine back here. This is an aspidistra or a cast iron plant called clouded leopard. This one, you can see the spotting in the leaves on these. These are really tough, rugged plants. This back area of our garden tends to be kind of a tough area with root competition, and I don't know how many cast iron plants we have back here. Now we're going to see another one that we just over here that we planted as well, but they all have some interesting quality to them. Striping, spotting, narrow leaves, wider leaves, all very interesting. They flower in the winter time down at the base, and we'll see another plant that does that same thing. So, if you're not looking for the flowers, you're not going to see them. We want to do a video with Tony Avent down at Plant Delights at some point on aspidistra. He's got an entire greenhouse breeding program for these, and just a ton of interesting combinations and interspecies hybrids that they're working on to really make these cast iron plants interesting. Everybody watching can grow this plant. So for us in the South, they go in the ground in shaded conditions, and they'll take, as long as the soil's well drained, they'll take moist or dry shade. As long as it's fairly well draining, it doesn't stay wet all the time. And those of you in the north can grow it as a houseplant. It's finally the day I actually put my favorite Japanese maple in the ground. We have, I don't know how many Japanese maples we have or Asian maples we have at this point, but Bihu is actually my favorite. This is Acer palmatum Bihu. The one at the J.C. Ralston Arboretum is just absolutely beautiful. In the winter time, this thing is just unbelievable. Kind of an orangey yellow bark on it, and it's a true four-season plant. Comes out with kind of pink new growth. which settles into this pretty vibrant chartreuse color, and then settles into like an emerald green, and then goes back to yellow with its fall color. This one is going to require a little bit of surgery. It's got a split down here pretty low, and I could make, I think I want it to be single trunked until it's about at least this tall. So what I'm going to have to do at some point is go down in here and take off this entire side piece. I'm going to leave it for now and get some energy out of this growth, but I am going to do some major surgery on it at some point. I could take 2 stakes and stake those that split apart like this and grow it as, you know, 2 separate trunks, and that's kind of the way the one at the Ralston is, but I don't think I actually want it to split until it's about this tall. And again, I'm just going to do a little bit of surgery on it later, but that is my favorite Japanese maple, and it needs some afternoon shade, which this spot's kind of perfect. The sun will sneak in to this spot until 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then it goes into the shade in the afternoon. That should be the right amount of light to keep the color on it, but enough shade to not cook it so it ends up with no fall color whatsoever. Put in another mountain snow Pieris. We have one a little further down the line. This one's a really, really nice specimen. This is a Southern Living Plant Collection piece. Super, super heat tolerant Pieris. It gets these little white flowers, white racemes, weeks and weeks ago. This thing flowers very early in the season. So it gets the beautiful, really vibrant white flowers, which are great for shade plants, right? When we're talking about plants in part shade conditions, that white stands out from a mile away. Then the initial new growth on it is a red color, and then it settles into this just really nice, deep, dark green color. And we just found this one to just be this dry shade, especially the further that way, is much drier than this area. That one has just fought through it just fine. It's been amazing in the heat and the dry conditions over there. I thought it would, you know, I've given it the true test to whether or not this is a good Southern Pieris, and it really, really shines out here in the garden. You notice the broken chain link fence back here. Storm a long time ago took down a tree limb that destroyed this part of the fence. This is a shared fence with the neighbor, and from right here that way, it's actually in perfect shape. From here back, it needs to be repaired. I actually saved all the parts. I saved the top rail and the other parts to fix this from when we took the chain link fence down over there a few weeks ago. So I've got all the parts and pieces to actually repair this. It'll never look new, but it's also going to be hidden because we planted some larger growing things this entire length. We won't ever see this chain link fence 2 years from now because we've got an entire line of things, and we'll show you one more in just a minute. This is an Oakland holly. We've got golden Oakland holly on the other side of the path that has the gold foliage version of this. This self-fruiting, looks prickly, but it's not at all. It's kind of interesting. Same thing with another one I'm about to show you. It's self-fruiting, so you know, once it gets some mature size on it, it'll be covered in red berries. Really fantastic, really compact, narrow habit. I think that, you know, Nellie Stevens, most popular one of these kind of upright hollies, kind of grows more pyramidal like this. It really wants to be wider down at the base. Where this one, this is how this thing grows. And you can see it in the golden Oakland here too, how just, the thing hasn't been pruned at all, and it's been in the ground 3 years. This one will do the exact same thing. So if you're looking for a narrow upright holly, Oakland is definitely the one to go with. There's no question in my mind that this one's the least maintenance of all of them because you're not going to have to do any pruning on it. And that any pruning you do on them, there's no good time to prune one of these. It just finished flowering, so the berry set's coming. And so if any time of year I prune it, I'm going to disrupt what makes, you know, one of the things that makes this holly so special. But again, it's soft to the touch. You think, well, it's not, I'm not going to call it soft, but I mean, imagine if you worked at it hard enough, it could hurt you. But it's amazing how it looks. It looks wicked, but it's just not. Deciduous azalea here, and I don't know the lineage on this one, so I'm not going to call it a native, completely a native azalea. But it's one of the deciduous azaleas that gets really vibrant, really vibrant flowers. So it has a really vibrant red with a little bit of pink fringing on it. When I've seen the flower on this one's called Ed Stevens, and it's zone 5 to 9. Pretty much anybody watching can grow it. It's going to get quite big in time. It looks kind of small back here, surrounded by 4 larger things, but this one was in a 1-gallon container. I've moved it out just a hair from these two hollies, so it'll have some space in front of them to get some height on it in time. But these will be really, really vibrant flowers. A lot of times these deciduous hollies also have good fall color. I don't know on this one. We'll see in time. This is a plant we got from Mr. Maple in an unboxing video, like back in February or something. I don't remember when we unboxed it, but it's looking good. It's actually got some buds on it, but a lot of times when you transplant something into the ground and make it go through stress, you'll end up losing the flower buds. So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe they'll open up and we'll be able to show them in an upcoming video. And then this holly we've had in a container for 3 years. So it's another one that's graduated to the ground. This has been a series of videos where plants that we've had held hostage in containers are finally in the ground. This Christmas jewel holly, I'm gonna say that this is top 5 holly for me. We've had this thing for 3 years, and look at the berries set on this thing. It is absolutely, it's unbelievable the number of berries that actually form on this plant consistently. Also, it looks wicked, right? But it's not at all. It's the same thing as that Oakland holly. It's actually, this one's even softer. It's gonna have probably slightly broader. It's upright and narrow. You know, it's an upright, narrow growing holly, but it's probably gonna be slightly broader than Oakland. Oakland just kind of naturally grows very, very vertical unless you actually slow it down to make it wider. This one has a narrower leaf. The Oakland has a slightly broader leaf, slightly different coloration between the two foliages, you can see, and a slightly different habit. You know, this one you can see is just kind of a little more mounding overall, but this thing really shows off. And we've had it in a container for 3 years, just absolutely abused it, and it took it like a champ. You can see the flowers down here right at the ground level on these newly planted Asarum. This one's called Iron Butterfly. Got this one from unboxing, Plant Delights unboxing that we did earlier in the season. It's got a home here in the garden now. These are great shade plants. This one, I'm hoping I haven't put it in too much shade. We'll find out, but most of the Acerum's doing pretty well at the Ralston and in pretty deep shaded spaces. But here we are in April, and you can see those flowers right down at the ground. Super, super interesting plants. They'll spread with pretty heavy rhizomes, but not aggressively in any way, shape, or form. Really easy plants. And maintenance-wise, we can go through here and take off these kind of tattered leaves back to the ground, and then you got that new foliage coming out from the base, which looks a lot more crispy. Back in this, further back from the Asarum, I had to get this Rhythm and Blues salvia under control. I pointed this out last year that it tries to run everywhere through all these plants. It was in the middle of this Hydrangea paniculata. It was in the middle of this Hydrangea paniculata. It was out on the path on the other side, and I just chopped this stuff down just below the surface. Here's the material. We're not going to take this out because it's probably the hummingbird's favorite plant in the garden. But when I chop stuff down like this, I just do, chop and drop method where I chop it off down at the ground and then I just tuck it in up under the plant, and it's mulch. It's mulching itself. But every single time this thing goes to sleep and then wakes up, it's got to have some control added to it. Otherwise, it would be climbing all up in this hydrangea, this white wedding hydrangea and the variegated hydrangea. It'd be over here in the viburnum, and here's the golden Oakland holly I was just talking about just a minute ago. But got that under control as well. Once a season, again, I just take the shovel real quick and just chop them out. I don't turn it into anything more than that. If I missed some and they just start to come right back from it, I'll go through there again, chop it right below the base and keep walking. Any of the material that falls to the ground can either sit right where it's sitting, because it'll be gone in the heat in a day, or it can just be kicked right up under the plant and it's mulching itself. So we showed clouded leopard aspidistra. This is actually a completely different species. Right here, it has a much narrower foliage, but it has that same spotting in the leaf, and this one's just called leopard, where the other one was called clouded leopard. The maintenance on these is just taking off the kind of old tattered foliage. You see all the new coming from the ground. Here we are right at the end of April. This is when these cast iron plants do the vast majority of their growing for us. And that, you know, a few weeks back or even now, I can just take these ones off of it that are a little bit tattered or spotted, and all this new foliage will come out clean, bright, shiny, looking great. They're evergreen, but once a year they need a tiny bit of maintenance. Just another one, just such a great, tough shade plant for our area, and so many interesting ones. It's one of those things, this, you know, with cast iron plants, that there's just so many interesting ones. It's one of the reasons I want to do that video with Tony, just all the different species and all the different, you know, the narrow leaves, spotting, striping, solid greens, very low growing, very tall growing, interesting flowers. Just such an interesting group of plants, and I think really underused, and maybe not so underused as we just don't typically see a lot of the more interesting ones at retail. Okay, so in a video over on the Learn to Garden video series, which is for sale over on my website, I moved the mood ring podocarpus from here down the line just a little bit, and it's in a sunnier spot down there, and it should be loving its new conditions. It was a little too shady here to get that coloration that we wanted to get on it, and I think it just looks better down there. Literally, when we moved it over there, Steph said, this is where the thing should have been in the first place. It's absolutely perfect down there. But that opened up a hole, and we have this copper top viburnum. I planted these at the old house too. If you've been following along with the channel since the old house, I planted 3 copper top viburnum there. And before I left, I planted them, and then it was within 6 months that I sold the house and moved away. In that 6 months, they had gone like this much. They had grown this much. It was unbelievable. This is sweet viburnum. We have another sweet viburnum out in the front garden as well. We just moved up against the front foundation. This one, again, is called copper top, and you can see why. It has this coppery new foliage. Anytime it's actively growing, it has this beautiful foliage on it. It gets the same fragrant flowers that we would expect from a sweet viburnum. It'll reach 8 to 10 feet tall, maybe 5, 6 feet wide. They're hardy in 7B to 10, but I will tell you that probably in 7B, I'm not going to put it out in some sort of open space where the wind can just really, you know, hit it very hard during the winter time. I think, you know, out in open space, zone 8 to 10, 7B, foundation planted, or, you know, where a building or something is slowing the wind down a little bit. But I love this plant. There were a bunch of them at the Ralston Blooms the other day. So there's a bunch of interesting plants that were for sale at Ralston Blooms, and there was this group of copper top viburnum. They looked absolutely fantastic, and they ended up selling. But that first night, I didn't see anybody grabbing them. I was like, man, this is a great plant. It was priced right. It was like the perfect, you know, it's such a great plant. It's just people didn't know it, or, you know, weren't interested in shrubs, you know, because there was a lot of interesting perennials and ground covers and herbs and that kind of thing. So it may not have been the shrub crowd. Maybe they ended up selling on Saturday. But man, it's such a good plant, and it doesn't. Again, it flowers. It's fragrant, but it doesn't need to flower. Look at this foliage color on it. And it'll fill this gap, fill this window with the fence, and again make part of this chain link fence disappear. So there's 12 new plants in the garden in this new space, and we still have some room back here to put a few small things in. So a couple fillers, probably at least one more screening plant along the back, and then just a few more videos here with some color going in the ground. And at that point, I think, again, we'll slow down, do a few tour videos, and get some hardscaping done here in the garden. So thank you very much for following along with it.